Hi, welcome to Numerix Video Blog. I'm your host, Jim Joggle. Joining us today is a frequent friend of the blog, Kevin McFarland, Head of Research for Market Structure and Technology at Greenwich Associates. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Kevin, not many people do this and put themselves out there this way, but we have your 2015 top trends to watch for. And want to talk a little bit, obviously we're going to start looking ahead to 2016, but what'd you get right and what'd you get wrong is going to be the ultimate question. Now, I'm not going to go through all 15, and that report is available on GreenwichAssociates.com. But I do want to talk about a couple of these. Of the 15, what's not going to be on the list going into 2016?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So let's talk about some of the stuff that will continue on. Rates and volatility, right? Still a big part of the conversation. Hopefully, leading into next year, the when will rates rise conversation will be over because they will have started to rise. So that'll be interesting. Regulation in Europe around EMIR and MiFID II have been big topics in 2015. Will continue to be big topics in 2016, but in a different way, right? We should actually see swaps start to clear, sort of mandated for clearing in Europe in 2016. So that should be pretty interesting. So one of the things that we talked about in this 2015 paper was about the FX market, regulation around FX and NDFs and clearing. No movement there. It seems like there will not be any movement there in the near future. The regulators seem to have bigger fish to fry and seem to be leaving FX alone for the time being. So I think we'll put that one aside for the time being. The other interesting one that I'm sort of undecided on is the futurization of the swaps market. We've been talking about that since at least 2010 when Dodd-Frank was passed, if not longer. There's certainly been some progress there. There's been sort of an uptick in volume for a couple of the major products, the CME, of course, Aris, GMEX, some of the newer ones, but there still does not seem to be any wholesale sort of changes in buy-side behavior. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But for the time being, seems to be sort of in a slow and steady pattern.
So one of the things I wanted to look about is your second one was U.S. banks getting a real taste of Basel III. Obviously some of the capital charges have been phased in. Going to see continuations of that, but I think most notably over the past few weeks has been the quantitative impact report on FRTB, and so kind of taking a look ahead as it relates to the introduction of capital in the trading book alongside the rising cost of capital on the banking side. How are banks going to start looking at their businesses? Is it time that we're going to see an exit potentially out of some asset classes?
Yeah, I mean we've seen a lot of that this year. We've seen a lot of it recently, right? We've seen a number of firms sort of back out of the swaps clearing business. We've seen a number of firms over the last 2 to 3 months, measurably back off of their fixed income businesses because of the cost of capital and the sort of limited profitability they're seeing in some of those businesses. That seems to continue. There's still a lot more to come, and I think one interesting data point is if we look at Europe, U.S. banks working with European clients are really sort of capturing a lot more of the market than are the European banks. So even as the U.S. banks are hit by tougher capital charges, the European banks are already facing a lot of those charges, so already have a tougher regime to follow, which is allowing the U.S. banks to really pick up a tremendous amount of share, on the home turf of the European banks.
But now is regulation potentially under fire? Because over the past couple of weeks, we've even seen the Bank of England coming out looking to say, let's reduce some of these capital charges for the English banks so they can be more competitive. Yeah. So what kind of signal could we see in terms of a little bit of a fist fight, if you will, going into the 16?
Well, that's the great part about the liquidity debate is now we have more and more of the big regulatory bodies around the world and central banks stepping up and saying liquidity problem, what are we going to do? To a large extent, they caused the liquidity problem. They told banks, we don't want you taking these risks, we don't want you committing this capital, and now they're dealing with the consequences. So, exactly, where that tug of war ends, and if they back off, you talk about corporate bonds gets a lot of attention there. So, you want liquidity in the corporate bond market, make it more affordable for banks to hold corporate bond inventory, so they can provide that liquidity in the marketplace again. It's really in the hands of the regulators to make those changes.
So, this week, you had the new Brad Pitt movie coming out, right? Based on the Michael Lewis book, looking back at the credit crisis. He's out there saying we need more regulation, but yet perhaps we're at a point of saying less.
We don't need more regulation. I mean, we certainly needed a lot of what we got, I think, out of Dodd-Frank. I think the fact that we have a lot more data to work with, we have more transparency into who's doing what. I think central clearing of a lot of these products is in the end a good thing, despite the complexities of getting to this point. But yeah, I mean, we certainly went too far. We got too prescriptive. So, you know, despite Michael Lewis and Elizabeth Warren, it's not about more, maybe more fine-tuned regulations and laws that from what we currently have, but certainly not more.
Okay, so let's go to the other side of your coin on the technology side. One of the things you indicated for the 15 of 15 was cloud computing moving closer to business as usual. Are we getting there?
You know, it's sort of incremental. I think we are. I think it's getting a little bit closer, both on the buy and sell side, people feeling more comfortable. I think you're also having CTOs realizing they are using things that are running in the cloud when they didn't completely make that connection before. I think a couple of years ago, they thought of the cloud as, you know, servers off somewhere where I don't know where they are. Can I trust my data there? You know, whereas the reality is a lot of sort of software as a service and hosted trading technology in some cases that are used and have been used for a couple of years on the sell side in particular, that is how it's running. So I think just a better understanding is coming to some of those technology professionals, which has come from education, which then allows them to think a little bit more broadly and think about how they can expand that. And then there's the cost-cutting side. They have to figure out how to do things cheaper and more efficiently, and clearly using more sort of cloud-delivered solutions is a much more efficient way to get the compute power that they need.
Oh, clearly. I mean, looking at the overall revenue profiles of Amazon and for AWS and Microsoft, people are buying the cloud and consuming it. So
yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about this in the past, but it used to be 15 years ago that the technology on Wall Street was sort of far surpassed what you would have at home. Whereas now I feel like it's really gotten to be the other way, where your personal technology is often better than what you have at work. That needs to reverse, right? I mean, we're talking about sort of big money moving around and real institutional workflows that should benefit from all of the technology that in the end was developed for the consumer.
So let's look ahead to 2016. If I had to take a guess in terms of technology reform, my guess would either be A, blockchain, or B, prevention on cyber attacks.
Yeah, absolutely. So blockchain, there's no question. I think one of the things that we'll see from blockchain in 2016 is that the conversations get a little bit more real. I think 2015 was a year of people learning what even is this, and how does it work. And we get into 2016, I think it'll get more realistic in terms of what it can actually do, not sort of less pie in the sky and more sort of where the rubber meets the road, where the engineers tell us what the limitations are, so we can then ultimately find the benefits. I think that's a big part of it. And then the other thing, I think from a tech perspective, and we mentioned this last year, is talking about instant messaging. But I think instant messaging is now the wrong way to call it, and we've learned that it's more about sort of online collaboration and connectivity and integration. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that conversation next year as well.
Well, at any point in time, you have Symphony, gracing the internal pages of the New York Post. Obviously, there's a more visible movement around collaboration, especially within the banking industry.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, when it gets to the mainstream media, then obviously the conversation's hit an inflection point.
Well, just do me one favor, stay off of page 6. Kevin, I want to thank you so much. And when is your report coming out for your outlook?
Like 2 days after the New Year, so look for it as soon as you get back to work after the vacation.
All right, January 3rd, mark the calendars. Kevin, I want to thank you so much for coming. And of course, we always want to talk about the things that you want to talk about. Please feel free to follow us on LinkedIn or on Twitter at NX Analytics. Also, Kevin, I know you're on Twitter, your handle?
K. McPartland.
K. McPartland, excellent. And the website is
Greenwich.com.
Greenwich.com. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.